step into the new year, it is the perfect time to envision the future we want to create. Hello and welcome. I am Sadhika Tiwari and you are watching Eco India. A lot in the world is changing and a lot is under threat. Our flora, fauna, oceans, mountains, rivers and so much more. But the power of restoration is immense. In today's episode, let's explore what can be done to start now to create this future that we all want to live in. One of the biggest challenges that our environment faces currently is the loss of tree cover and forests. And as we imagine this better future, we cannot go on as we have so far. But as we embrace the future, a lot of hope lies in green innovations. Let's head to Tamil Nadu to meet communities who are rethinking their tomorrow.
Anandi is back in the village where she grew up, but even among the idyllic farms of western Tamil Nadu, the heat is unforgiving. She has seen how village change over the years, and not always for the better.
Day by day, temperatures are rising. Sometimes it gets up to 40, even 42 degrees. It might still look green, but we feel the heat. We didn't experience it getting this hot when there were more trees. Now with so many trees gone, the situation is alarming.
Anandi is 24 years old now and hasn't lived in the village for many years. She moved to the nearest big city for studies, Coimbatore, and then to Bengaluru for her career as a graphic designer. Like a growing number of younger Indians, she lives between big cities like Bengaluru, Chennai, and Coimbatore. While her village is in the early stages of deforestation and change, Chennai's residents have lived in a concrete jungle for decades now, like NGO founder Shobha Menon.
Look at our cities now. You'll notice many buildings. As urban areas expand, we have cut down trees to make space for them.
In 1988, residential, commercial and industrial areas accounted for roughly 18% of the Chennai metropolitan area. By 2017, this increased to almost 50%. Meanwhile, agricultural lands decreased by more than half, and forest land has been hit even harder.
At that time, people didn't view the cutting of trees as a civic issue. The demand was for water, roads, and so on. No one asked for trees or even thought about their importance. It was really disheartening.
The destruction of green spaces for new constructions has intensified what's known as the urban heat island effect. Cities and urbanized regions are heating up at twice the global average rate because they trap heat more than non-urban areas. And as the climate warms and the frequency of heat waves dramatically increases, that's bad news. Living with extreme heat is a battle. Besides having to use more energy to run cooling systems, people suffer more from air pollution and breathing problems. And heat is a silent killer. We don't see the effects of extreme heat as visibly as the physical destruction brought by hurricanes, floods, and other natural disasters. But extreme heat now kills up to 500,000 people worldwide each year. Not far from Chennai, however, in the township of Auroville, there has been progress in other direction. In the 1960s, people from across the world came together in Auroville to establish a sustainable community which has since gained international recognition for its emphasis on sustainable practices. Renu was part of building this community from the very beginning.
So everything took a lot of time to do just to get the first few things to grow. And many things were dying. And then suddenly things started to grow. And then we started studying what kind of species grows here. So people would go to all the old temples where there's still some forests, and throughout the year they would go and collect seeds from all the different trees and plant them here. And then over time, replant them.
These are lessons neighboring Chennai needs to learn. Trees don't just provide shade and reflect the sun's ray back up in cities. They actively cool their surroundings through a process called evapotranspiration. Which is why some residents in Chennai, like Shobha Menon, are working with the city administration to systematically plant and care for trees, build community parks and create green corridors along water bodies.
We started planting rare indigenous tree species in this area. We now have over 1,000 trees here, along with several medicinal plants.
Planting indigenous trees is especially important for sustainable development. But it is also a question of taking care of already existing trees, says Menon. Murali Murugan has proven that this is possible. He is the founder of Murali Architects, known for its innovative sustainable architecture and urban planning in Chennai and Tamil Nadu. He built this house called the Tree Hugger more than a decade ago, where he integrated existing trees into his design so that no trees were removed for the building process.
If you look here, you can see a large tree. A big pit was created for its roots, so the tree could thrive without damaging the building. We ensured that the water runoff was properly managed, so the building is not affected even during rain. Trees are vital for cities. They help us live harmoniously with nature. Without them, climate change is a certainty. Buildings get hot, the western walls of buildings especially heat up. But trees absorb heat, helping to keep buildings cool. Additionally, trees provide shade, oxygen, and make us feel calm and relaxed.
Trees shades oxygen peaceful.
In addition to growing smaller plants or gardens, he thinks urban architecture needs to make more space for what was used to exist there before the buildings came about. So what will Chennai be like in 2050? Can individual and collective efforts for nature make a difference?
In 2050, I hope to see myself, my children and everyone else living in a world full of trees, green spaces and clean air. I certainly do not want it to be like this.
When we imagine a green, clean future, communities often become a central and critical part of it. However, community action is often lacking in most cities and villages despite directions. But a village in Kerala has emerged as an inspiring exception where grassroots efforts are really protecting the environment and also strengthening the bond between nature and people.
These women are not stripping the riverbank bare. Devakiyati and other women from villages in Kasaragod district know exactly what needs to go and what can stay on the banks of the Chetari river. They've already removed the garbage. Now they're tackling the invasive plants. They grow especially fast. The most common weed is the Singapore daisy. It landed here from somewhere and now it's everywhere. Even though we removed it all last year, it immediately started growing back again. We pluck it all out and burn it every time, but if we miss a small part somewhere, it grows back. Around 100 women are involved. They meet here twice a year. The riverbank cleanup is part of a project run by the local Biodiversity Management Committee, which brings together representatives from the authorities and local interest groups. They do whatever they can to preserve biodiversity here. Shyam Kumar Purvankara is in charge of proceedings. The cleanup is the first pillar in the river restoration project.
Most of the invasive species will make a barrier for other plants to grow. In some cases, they will be just releasing some kind of chemicals to prevent the growth of the other plants. That is one thing. So, by in a way, it is restricting the other plants to grow, thereby degrading the habitat.
That in turn affects birds and insects. Shyamkumar Purvankara, who is a passionate bird watcher, says many of them depend on native plants for their food and habitat. The North Kerala region is known for its waterways and forests that are a haven for plants and animals, including herons and ibises. In addition to the widespread coconut palms, there are also mangrove forests. Despite the abundance of water, the region has a problem. Groundwater levels have fallen. In fact, for a few months each year, the Chittari River dries up completely. Erosion of the riverbanks has also increased. Purvankara says that when the restoration project started back in 2021, they initially removed all the plants, which actually made things worse.
When the stream is cleaned, mostly what they do is they cut all the plants on the edges of the river. So what happens is, when it is cut, some plants will be dyed. That dyed will degrade that soil and it will erode in the next rain. So the edges of the rivers will be getting eroded over the years.
So they soon changed their methods. The Biodiversity Management Committee is also focusing on reforestation. That is the second pillar of the project. They only plant native species. The government-run agro-service center carefully selects and grows the plants. The Chittari Restoration Project is the first of its kind for a Biodiversity Management Committee. The state government has approved the project to run until the end of 2025. Navisa Tubivi is the former head of the nearby Agro-Service Center. She worked closely with the Biodiversity Management Committee to select the right plants and is excited about the project's success. The improvement is beautifully visible. From the first year, 70% of the plants have grown, even though people live in the area and the land is used for grazing. We water and fertilize the plants by the river. That's helped to protect them and strengthen the river banks. The project was initially envisioned for an 18-kilometer stretch of the river, but it had to be scaled down drastically to 2 kilometers because of land rights.
It's very difficult to do it in a large stretch, because it's all not government land. There are a lot of private lands in between. Streams are always public, but stream edges are not. So we have to educate people to get it to a larger extent.
Purvankara is hoping to persuade local landowners to get involved by arguing that they will benefit directly. The wells would have more water again, for example, as restoring the riverbanks helps to raise the groundwater level. In 4 to 5 years' time, the newly planted trees will have developed enough roots to stabilize the riverbank. The committee hopes that then everyone will realize that this type of restoration is worthwhile.
Speaking of a greener future, is it truly possible in today's world to live a life that has no negative impacts on the environment? For starters, let's take a closer look at our housing. We build new houses, buildings, infrastructure, internal heating and cooling, and so much more to keep ourselves comfortable. And all of this needs a lot of space, materials, energy, and so on. And often, this can be really problematic for our environment. So, can we live comfortably without damaging our environment? Let's head to Switzerland to see what the future of responsible living actually looks like.
A construction project in Switzerland is setting standards for sustainable building. It aims to make climate-neutral living possible. It's very sustainable, and it's also good for the children to grow up like this. The Hobelwerk project's concept isn't just about climate, but also new forms of communal living. The trip from Zurich to Winterthur takes about half an hour by train. In the building cooperative's 5 houses, a good 400 residents are trying to achieve on a small scale what the whole of Switzerland wants to do by 2050, become CO2 neutral. Solar panels on the rooftops generate power that we feed back into the buildings. We're using recycled construction elements, which greatly reduces the CO2 footprint. And we're including large green spaces to help reduce much of the excess heat. Pascal Flammer cuts back on CO2 by planning in a widespread use of second-hand materials. He had windows installed that were taken from demolished buildings and cladding from an old factory hall. These balcony railings used to be bed frames in a prison. Recycling materials means using less energy than making new ones from scratch, but it also presents other challenges. If you don't even know what materials you're going to build with in the future, you can't plan very exactly. So you don't really have your materials together until construction is just about to start. And that leads to a certain imprecision. You can really see that here, for example, by these frontal facades that bring together a collection of different materials, a patchwork that you kind of have to piece together. The Hobelwerk encourages a sense of community. Studio apartments like these are open to the courtyard. In the little 2-room apartments, residents can combine living and working in one space, and anyone can knock any time. I like having the working and the living area together in the apartment. Also that I'm included in the community, and that people are always dropping by and looking around the studio. Generous common spaces and individually usable private spaces. These are called cluster apartments. The concept cuts down on living space per person and saves energy. We're a nuclear family of 5. My husband and I and 3 children and 2 foster children living with us. My mother's also got a cluster apartment here. It's nice to have a spacious common living and dining area where we actually spend most of our time, and everyone has their private space too. With global temperatures rising, cooling is as important as heating. The Hobelwerk has created this green spongy area where rainwater can collect and slowly evaporate, cooling the whole complex. These different concepts are all combined in the Hobelwerk to make CO2 neutral living possible in the near future. And to boot, communal living concepts offer its residents far more than just cheap and space-saving housing.
Community mobilization often needs motivation and awareness, but it doesn't always have to be intense or serious all the time. It can also be fun and engaging. Let's meet a young rapper who's on a mission to spread exactly this message while keeping it cool. She uses her music to spread awareness about the environment, to speak up for it, and to challenge status quo.
24-year-old Madhura Yashwantgani is on her way to the recording studio. She is a rapper, but not the kind you imagine. Known as Mahi Ji, Madhura is a conscious rapper whose music focuses on environmental and social issues.
नमस्कार मंडळी, आज पुन्हा विषयावर बोलू. नेचरचं करू कौतुक, विकासाची पानं खोलू. काही काळापूर्वी माणसाची इतकीच गरज होती. अन्न वस्त्र एका छताखाली लाईफ सरत होती. सरस होतं प्रकृती आणि माणसाचं नातं. पशु पक्षी प्राणी सारे एकोप्याने राहतं.
Mahi records all her music at RFM Studios, Pune. This studio is owned by Rap Boss, another conscious rapper and music producer, and Mahi's trusted collaborator. They have been working together for over 3 years.
When she reached out to me at that time, I noticed that there were a lot of rappers that were making tracks that had abuse in them, or they were dissing someone else. So if someone is writing from a different point of view and representing their community, thinking socially or representing the tribal communities, I thought this was a good thing and took an interest in her music.
While Mahi looks at home in the rap studio, she started out as a poet, but decided to use rap to tell her story for a very specific reason.
I realized that the way I think about social or environmental issues, people my age don't think that way. Or rather, they ignore these things because they are self-involved. They don't really care about what's happening around them or want to take an interest in them. They kind of feel like, what's the point of thinking about these things when I have so many problems in my life? What's the point of thinking about the world's issues? I thought that if I write poems, no one will pay attention. So then, why not write rap instead?
About 40% of India's population is under the age of 25. And according to Spotify India, rap is the fourth most popular genre of music in the country, making rap the perfect way for Mahi to reach her peers. While her concerts are loud and energetic, she finds her inspiration in quiet places around the city, writing down ideas in her book or phone wherever she goes. Her key focus always being conservation, due to her connection with her tribal community.
म्हणे समाज मागास माझा विकासाचा नसे धागा शहरीकरणाची ना ओढ नुसता गावाचा तगादा परिविचाराने मोठा नसे संस्कृतीचा तोटा खोटा बाई बाप्या भेद वर्ण वस्त्र तान धरून हातामध्ये हात माझा नाचतो समाज मिरवा विकासाचा तुम्ही झेंडा मला निसर्गाचा.
Through her music, Mahi points out that tribal communities are integral to conservation. In her track, The Story of Hasdeo, Mahi talks about how it is the tribal community that is fighting to save one of India's densest forests in Chhattisgarh.
You must have heard about a forest called Hasdeo in Chhattisgarh. The forest is known as the lungs of India. That's how much oxygen it produces. Isn't that more important for us than the electricity that will come out of it? They're going to mine the area for coal to supply electricity to Rajasthan.
Standing on a protected hill in urban Pune, Mahi can't help but think about how protected spaces are not afforded to her people, as tribal communities are often displaced due to large-scale developmental projects.
So now when we live in developed cities, you have a sense that you earned rights to this place, built a home. No one can attack it, no one can throw me out of there. You become so protective about it. But when it comes to the Adivasi community, if they are displaced, no one cares. People think, well, it's for development, so it has to happen. You're being given a new home, right? They say these things so easily. They don't understand. I mean, if it was your own home, would you ever give it up? And for Adivasi communities, generations have lived in those forests and those hills. They have raised those forests. They have raised those forests and protected them. How can we expect them to leave their forests?
एसी में बैठकर एटमॉस्फेयर पे बातें ग्लोबल वार्मिंग से तो वाटी लगाते क्यों कोयले की खदान बनाने चला है लाखों पेड़ों को तू दफन कर रहा है कई जीवों का वो घर था जिस पे तेरा निर्दयी बुलडोजर चला है कहाँ जाएंगे वो उड़ के पंछी कहाँ जाएंगे वो प्राणी कहाँ से भरेगा सांस उन फेफड़ों में ऑक्सीजन की होगी कमी जब आदिवासी भी ना होगा जंगल में तो जंगल की होगी सिर्फ हानि आवाज उठाने को कोई भी ना होगा जंगल की
But being a conscious rapper has its own price to pay.
The rap that I do, conscious rap, I don't earn anything from it. In fact, instead of making money, you have to spend money, be it for video shoot or audio recording. So for the sake of financial security, I had to take up another job. But there is neither money nor views in it. It doesn't even reach as many people. But the people we do reach, they respect it.
So Mahi has to work a full-time corporate job to support her music, but she's still fueled by hope. Hope that her music will move a new generation towards conservation.
That's all for today's episode. As we saw, it is the small steps in the right direction that make a big difference. Do you know of any such efforts? Do let us know. You can email us or reach out to me directly on my social media handles. Thank you for joining us. I will see you next week with more such reports. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Namaskar.